Welcome back to my channel where the tiniest details lead to the biggest reveals. Today's story starts with something so small, so normal, that most people would have missed it entirely. But this Redditor didn't, and that small detail, a Wi-Fi connection, that's what started everything. Our post comes from a user who, on the surface, had a pretty solid relationship. He'd been dating his girlfriend for just over a year. Things were going great. They had talked about moving in together once his lease ended. They'd met each other's families. They had inside jokes, weekly date nights, and even started casually browsing for apartments online. To him, she wasn't just someone he loved. She was someone he saw a future with. They talked about furnishing their first place, who'd do what chores, and which Netflix shows they'd finally binge once they had a place of their own. But all of that changed. Fast. What should have been a celebratory night turned into the beginning of the end. And all because of one tiny notification on a phone screen. It started like a normal, even romantic night. The couple had gone out for dinner. Nothing fancy, just their favorite little Italian place, to talk about moving in together. They laughed over pasta, shared dessert, and finally made the decision. Once his lease was up in April, he'd move in with her. It felt real now. Excited, he texted his best friend Ryan to share the news. Ryan was thrilled for them. He invited them over to his place to pre-game, have a few drinks, and maybe go out afterward. Ryan even offered to let them crash at his place for the night so they didn't have to worry about driving or getting a late Uber. It felt like a good way to celebrate. They agreed, and about 30 minutes later they pulled up to Ryan's house. Now this is important. OP was sure his girlfriend had never been to Ryan's place. They had all hung out before, sure, but always at bars, restaurants, or OP's apartment. Never Ryan's home. As soon as they got there, OP's girlfriend said she really needed to use the bathroom. She ran inside ahead of them, leaving her purse and phone on the entry table. OP lingered outside with Ryan, who was making sure the Uber wasn't early. Then it happened. Her phone lit up. Ew, OP glanced down casually, and that's when he saw it. At the top of the screen, right under the time, it read, "Connected to Ryan's Wi-Fi." He blinked. Looked again. It definitely said connected. Not available, not secured, connected. Automatically. And suddenly, something didn't feel right. OP stared at the screen a little longer, then checked his own phone just to be sure. His phone wasn't connected to Ryan's Wi-Fi. In fact, it showed the network as locked. No guest access. No open signal, just Ryan's private connection, the same one OP had only ever used after asking for the password directly. He looked back at her phone. Still connected. That's when something clicked. She had a new phone, barely 2 months old. He remembered because they went to the store together when she bought it. Her old one had a busted screen and couldn't hold a charge. So this was definitely a fresh device, and Wi-Fi doesn't magically reconnect to networks unless you've connected it before, which meant she'd been at Ryan's, recently, without him, and without mentioning it, OP's brain started racing. Could it have been a mistake? Maybe she'd been to Ryan's at some point with other friends. Maybe she got the password from OP himself a while back and just saved it. Maybe Ryan had changed his settings. Maybe he was just overthinking. He kept cycling through possibilities, each one weaker than the last. He tried to shake the feeling off. He wanted to believe there was a reasonable explanation, that there had to be, but something didn't sit right. And even though he told himself not to jump to conclusions, that small glowing Wi-Fi symbol was now the loudest thing in the room. A few moments later, his girlfriend came out of the bathroom, all smiles. "You guys ready to go?" she asked casually, adjusting her hair like nothing was wrong. OP nodded, still watching her closely. Then came another red flag. She walked into the kitchen, Ryan's kitchen, and without hesitation opened the exact cabinet where the glasses were. Not a moment of pause. No asking where things were. She just walked straight to it, pulled out 3 glasses and started filling them with water from the fridge. OP blinked. Even he didn't know which cabinet had the glasses at Ryan's house. It wasn't like they hung out there often. And Ryan definitely didn't have a labeled, perfectly organized kitchen, but she moved like she'd been there before. Like she knew it well, and suddenly the Wi-Fi thing didn't feel so small anymore. It wasn't just a coincidence. It was a piece of a larger picture forming in OP's mind. A picture he wasn't ready to look at, but couldn't ignore. She handed him a glass and smiled. "You okay? You look kind of out of it." OP forced a smile back. "Yeah, I'm good. Just tired, but inside he wasn't good. His mind was spinning. His stomach had that dull, heavy feeling of dread. He kept telling himself he didn't have proof yet. But everything in him screamed that something was off. He just didn't know how deep the lie went. Not yet. The rest of that. Night played out like nothing had happened. Drinks were poured. The Uber came. They laughed, danced, and even fell asleep on Ryan's couch like everything was normal. But nothing felt normal anymore. Over the next few days, OP couldn't stop thinking about it. Every time he looked at her, he remembered the way she knew exactly where the glasses were, the way her phone automatically connected, the smile on her face, like nothing was wrong. He kept quiet at first. He didn't want to accuse her without proof. Maybe he was being paranoid. Maybe it was a fluke. But deep down, he knew it wasn't. So finally, 3 days later, he decided to ask. It was casual at first. They were watching TV, half distracted, when he turned to her and said, "Hey, this might sound random, but has your phone ever connected to Ryan's Wi-Fi before?" She froze, just for a second. But OP saw it. She looked down at the remote in her hands and said, I don't think so. Maybe. I don't know. I mean, I've been there before. Maybe it just auto-connected." That was her answer. But OP wasn't satisfied. He nodded slowly. "It's just, your phone is new, remember? The one you got 2 months ago? Wouldn't have been to Ryan's with it unless you went recently." She didn't respond at first. Then she gave a nervous laugh. "Maybe I was with you and forgot?" But OP shook his head gently. "You've never been to his place." "Not with me." That's when her face changed. The lightness disappeared. Her jaw tightened. She didn't laugh again. OP didn't yell. He didn't accuse. He just looked her in the eye and said, "Please just tell me the truth." And for a long moment she didn't say anything. But then her eyes started to fill with tears. She looked away and wiped at her face, trying to speak, but nothing was coming out at first. Then, in a cracked voice, she whispered, "I didn't mean for it to happen." OP sat still, heart pounding. He felt like he already knew what was coming, but still, hearing it was something else entirely. She broke down. 2 weeks ago, we had that stupid fight about me always working late, remember? I was upset. You were upset. I didn't want to come home. OP nodded slowly. He remembered. It wasn't even that serious, just a miscommunication about dinner plans. But she'd stormed out that night. She continued, "I texted Ryan. I don't know why. I just needed someone to talk to. Someone neutral." Her voice cracked again. "I went over there. We talked. He listened. I didn't plan for anything to happen. OP stayed silent. His chest was heavy. His hands were cold. She took a deep breath. It happened again a few days later. I went back. We were drinking. One thing led to another. It wasn't emotional, I swear. It didn't mean anything. OP blinked slowly, unable to speak. His best friend. His girlfriend. In the same house, behind his back? She reached out, her voice pleading now. I messed up. I know I did. I hate myself for it. I didn't tell you because I didn't want to ruin us. It was a mistake. Just a physical thing, please. Please don't let this be the end of us. But for OP, it was the end of something. Maybe not the relationship yet, but definitely the trust. The comfort. The sense of safety he'd had with the two people closest to him. And the worst part, it wasn't just the betrayal. It was how stupidly small the detail was that gave it all away. Just a glowing Wi-Fi symbol. OP didn't say another word after the confession. Instead, he stood up and grabbed his coat. Without looking back, he left the apartment and stepped into the cool night air. He needed space, fresh air, distance, anything to get away from the heaviness sitting on his chest like a weight. Outside, the city felt distant and strange, like a different world. But inside, everything was crashing down all at once. The betrayal wasn't just about the physical act. It was the lies, the secrets, the fact that two people he trusted the most had shattered the foundation of his life without a second thought. His mind raced. Confusion twisted into anger, anger into sadness, sadness into numbness. He felt like he was drowning in a sea of questions he had no answers for. He pulled out his phone and deleted both their numbers. For now, he didn't want to hear from either of them. The texts, the calls, everything had to stop. Friends started to notice. Messages popped up. You okay? We're here if you need to talk. But OP ignored them all. He wasn't ready. He wanted to be alone with his thoughts, with his pain. At home, he sat in silence, replaying every moment they had shared. Every laugh, every fight, every quiet night. Were there signs he missed? Was it all a lie? How had he been so blind? The small things suddenly felt huge. The late-night texts she hid. The times Ryan showed up unexpectedly. The vague excuses about work. They all came rushing back, flashing like warning signs he'd chosen to ignore. But more than anything, he wondered how two people he cared about could betray him so deeply and so quietly. He realized he was more broken than he had ever imagined. Days passed, and OP found himself staring at the ceiling, questioning everything he thought he knew about love and trust. Had the relationship ever been real? Or was it just a carefully constructed story he told himself to feel safe and happy? He admitted reluctantly that he'd ignored little red flags before. Moments. He brushed aside because he wanted things to work, but now those moments felt like cracks in a dam that finally burst. He wasn't just mourning the loss of a partner. He was grieving the loss of his best friend, the person who had been there through thick and thin. The betrayal wasn't only romantic. It was deeply personal. OP considered reaching out for help. Maybe therapy. Maybe journaling. Anything to make sense of the whirlwind inside his head. He knew healing wouldn't be quick or easy, and even now, he wasn't sure if he'd ever forgive either of them, his girlfriend or his best friend. What he did know was that he needed time to rebuild himself from the pieces left scattered on the floor. And maybe, one day, he'd find a way to trust again. After sharing his story on our Bestof, OP was overwhelmed by the response. The post quickly gained traction, with hundreds of comments pouring in from people all over. Many praised OP's instincts, the way he noticed the strange Wi-Fi connection and trusted his gut despite the uncertainty. Several commenters shared their own stories of betrayal, echoing how tiny, almost invisible clues had tipped them off long before the truth came out. Some talked about how they had ignored those signs, just like OP admitted doing, only to be blindsided later. Others offered advice about healing, setting boundaries, and rebuilding trust in themselves. OP felt a strange mix of emotions reading the comments. He was grateful, deeply so, for the support and understanding from strangers who had been through similar pain. For the first time in days, he felt less isolated, yet the brokenness remained. The betrayal didn't fade just because people related to it. But knowing others had survived gave him a flicker of hope that maybe he would too. The Reddit community didn't fix everything, but it helped him see that he wasn't alone. And sometimes that made all the difference. OP wasn't sure what the future held. The wound was still fresh, and the questions about trust, forgiveness, and moving forward felt heavy on his mind. He was hurting, no doubt about it. But despite everything, he was quietly grateful that he had uncovered the truth before taking the next big step of moving in together. It could have been much worse if he had stayed blind. He wanted to leave everyone with a simple but powerful lesson. Trust your gut. Sometimes your instincts are trying to tell you something important, even if it's uncomfortable or hard to face. OP thanked Reddit for the kindness, advice, and solidarity he found in the community. It reminded him that even in the darkest times, there are people willing to listen and support. He promised he might share another update someday, if things changed or if he found new strength to move forward. For now, he would take it one day at a time, learning to heal and hoping to find peace again.